During the dark days of the pandemic, the restaurant industry faced a tough reality. Restaurants were closing and food insecurity was rising fast. But the difficult moment also opened the door to ingenuity and kindness. Famous chefs stepped in to help their communities by turning their restaurants into food kitchens. And it's a movement that continues today. Marcus Samuelsson was one of those chefs. He owns 13 restaurants around the world and has won 8 James Beard Awards. His cooking reflects a complex heritage and a desire to give back through food. Samuelsson was born in Ethiopia during a tuberculosis outbreak, and he lost his mother when he was 2 years old. He was adopted and raised in Sweden. His flagship restaurant is the iconic Red Rooster in Harlem. His latest venture is a new restaurant in New York City that focuses on creating space for Black female chefs to showcase their talent. I caught up with him there. Marcus, what an incredible space. And I certainly want to talk about the restaurant and ask about this latest project of yours here in New York City. Before we get to that, though, I would really love to speak about your activism. I don't think it is a new thing, but it's certainly a newly publicized idea that we see more. This idea of the well-known chef, or celebrity chef as you want to say, sure, really lending their platform to help out others in need. What motivates you to do that and to help out these communities that you're in?
I've seen it from my mentors on and on again, right? I was just a young pup when the tragics of 9/11 happened, and what did the chef community, how did we respond? We went down there, we helped out, and I remember being part of something when the city was so rocked was very, very powerful. And I think that, in combination of my background, being adopted, coming from Ethiopia, being helped by an organization, so these two things, these two super big happenings in my life, have always been something that I've thought about. But also the equality of food, right? Our space. How can we make it not just delicious and great, but how can we also make it more diverse? As the pandemic happened, we at Red Rooster, we as a community, partnering with World Central Kitchen, partnering with Jose Andres, was very, very important for us. And we served over 200,000 meals during that time.
So what exactly is World Central Kitchen doing?
So World Central Kitchen is an organization that Jose Andres started out of Washington, D.C. Anywhere, any place, whether it's any type of catastrophe, World Central Kitchen goes in and serves food for the community that have been affected by it. And they partner with local restaurants to cook the meal and then hand out the food. And during the pandemic, that's what we did in Harlem and in Newark. And it was game-changing. It was game-changing in the community, but also game-changing for us as a restaurant. We need to redefine what it meant to be a restaurant at that moment. You know, hospitality is not a business where you can sort of go away and work from home. You know, a friend of mine in the industry passed away very, very early. So we knew in hospitality, we're on the front line. We also knew early that restaurants going to close and will never open again.
As far as your work with Jose, he said something really interesting about the two of you. He said that you have both been fortunate to feed both the few and the many. Who are the few and who are the many?
Fine dining could very often be a very small space, right? Very often tied to high-end European restaurants. What we constantly try to do is to break that glass ceiling and present it to the many. Because great food does not have a zip code. It does not have an address. It should be for everybody.
It is hard to fathom the roots of your life being at such a young age. Your mother walks with you and your older sister 75 miles in Ethiopia in the middle of the tuberculosis epidemic. And then your mother sadly passes away, and the nurse that was taking care of her, illegally, you might add, takes you and your sister in, sets you up with an adoption agency, and gets you to Sweden. Two incredibly selfless acts that happened so early in your life.
Yeah.
How often do you go back to those moments?
Once a year, we go to Ethiopia just to say hi, but also to volunteer, but also for my family, for my own kids to see this is where we came from. I can't fathom. I look at it, it's like, how did we survive that, right? And I don't have the answer. It's just like it blows my mind, right? There's a couple of things, couple of ingredients in my recipe that I would never want to take away. Luck and the loving acts of others, of random others. You talk about breaking the law. Sometimes you have to break the law. Sometimes your action is ahead of the law. And one of my mentors, Miss Leah Chase from Duke Chase, they've only run their restaurant in New Orleans for 90 years. She broke the law by serving black and white customers. You know, pre-integration segregation, it was illegal. She constantly told me this: if you want change, it's not going to come easy. So the risk that I'm taking today, or my journey, when I compare it to huge risk takers, right? People who really, you know, living in America, listening to civil rights movement, listening to Muhammad Ali, and people who really took risks, they put everything on the line. That's when I think about my privilege.
At this current time in our country, we're still experiencing an age of division. And there's multiple kinds of division too, right? I mean, it's not just, you know, left or right or whatever, Democrat, Republican. There does seem to be this opportunity to use food as a way to kind of bridge everybody. Do you see that opportunity?
Yeah, I really do. America, first of all, is this big beacon to the world, right? Where these big conversations can be had, should be had, and it's a healthy and sometimes an ugly back and forth. But once it comes down, very often it lands just on the right side of right? And then you start the conversation again. And we've seen it with civil rights. We've seen it with the battles of so many different things. When I sit down with someone, it's classic New York table, with someone from Peru, somebody from Nigeria, or it's almost like a World Cup, right, at a New Yorker's table. And then you start realizing, oh, we have a similar flatbread. It's called, you know, pizza in Italy, and it's called flatbread in Egypt. And you start to see in the linkage, like, we share more things than we are apart.
Havamar, there's been a lot of talk, of course, about the food. There's also been a lot of talk about how diverse this staff is.
Yes. For me, it came down to the two things that I never saw coming up. I wanted to focus on people of color, specifically women of color. I never saw women of color in leadership positions when I was coming up as young chef. As we walk around here, you're going to see there is inspiration from the hut that I was born in Ethiopia to, you know, this very sort of Swedish wood and forest and environmental friendly place that I grew up in. We're fortunate enough to have a great staff, right, that are New Yorkers and are really passionate about being here. That's number one. And then as a leader, it's up to us strategically to put people in positions that they can win and we can win. And as customers, is the food has to be delicious, hospitality has to be great. But then in the middle of all that, it's like, here's a place where women lead, women drive. The why matters, right? We're just gonna see how they taste on them and figure them out. I think as a person of color and as a person coming from privilege, it's a privilege to be able to open a gorgeous restaurant in Chelsea, right? So if you're going to do that, with that privilege comes responsibility. How can you make the industry more diverse? It started at Red Rooster and it continued to build on here at Havamar. Obviously, as Black people, we're not monolithic, right? Any community is not monolithic. We share many things, but we also have different backgrounds, right? So it's an opportunity to really show that in a different way.
What specific experiences informed this decision now to really make it easier for the next Marcus Samuelsson, boy or girl?
Well, you're talking to someone that was actually told by a 3-star Michelin chef that I could never own a restaurant. I could work in a restaurant, but I could never own a restaurant because of the color of my skin. That really does two things to you. You either quit or get stubborn and go deeper on that, right? So I say that now with ease, talking to you about it, but it was a game-changing moment in my career in those, you know, mid-90s days when that happened. And that's why I came to America, right? Because my parents believed in the diversity that is here. I am a dreamer, and I say to any young person, any person, hold on to that dream and multiply it by 10. because you can make it happen. If you have a community around you, if you find mentors, and you find somebody that truly believes in you, and I've had all that.
When your friends reach out to you, they say, hey, Marcus, I hear you got a new restaurant. What do you tell them about this place?
Book a table.